Hey everybody, I've got a great book for you today. This one is called Memphis, Martin, and the Mountaintop, the Sanitation Strike of 1968. It's written by Alice Faye Duncan, illustrated by R. Gregory Christie. There was a lot of stuff in here that I learned. I did not know the whole history of this story or what led up to Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated. So let me read you what it says on the inside of the cover, and then I'll read you some excerpts from the book. For 9-year-old Lorraine Jackson, the sanitation strike of 1968 hit close to home. Lorraine marched with her daddy and other sanitation workers through the streets of Memphis, fighting for equal rights and safer working conditions. With her mother, she boycotted stores. Lorraine's life was forever changed when she heard Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preach his famous sermon, "I've been to the mountaintop," to the tired and frustrated strikers. Dr. King was tragically killed the next day, and hope seemed shattered. But Lorraine, her family, and the people of Memphis pushed through those difficult times because dreamers never quit. Author Alice Faye Duncan based the character of Lorraine Jackson on a teacher who participated in Memphis sanitation strikes as a child. Using a riveting combination of poetry and prose, Alice Faye reveals the inspiring story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s final stand for justice. Let me read you pieces. This is not the start of the book, but it says Memphis 1968, and it's beautifully illustrated, as you can see here. I remember Memphis. I remember the stinking sanitation strike. Alley cats, rats, and dogs rummaged through the piles of trash. Black men marched through Memphis with protest signs raised high. I also marched in 68 with red ribbons in my hair. I remember Memphis and legion of noble men. I remember broken glass and the voice of a fallen king. Fire, smoke, and ashes ravaged midnight cityscapes. Black men marched for honor, and I must tell the story. You must tell the story, so that no one will forget it. The conflict started in January, cold and wet with rain. Poor wages for black sanitation workers sparked grumblings of a labor strike. In stormy February, death made the grumblings swell to a loud, blasting rage. I know. I was there as clouds covered the Memphis sky. I had skipped outside to play and splash on the sidewalk in mud puddles. "Lorraine, Lorraine," Mama called my name. I could feel it. Punishment was on the way. But when Daddy ran up the porch, distressed and out of breath, Mama ignored my muddy shoes on her kitchen floor. Her clean kitchen floor. Bad news traveled at lightning speed. There was a tragic accident on a Memphis garbage truck. 2 black men working in the rain never made it home for dinner. Their names still live with me. Eckel, Cole, and Robert Walker dumped garbage with my daddy. Several Memphis garbage trucks were old and unsafe. The trucks were not maintained. According to my daddy, a packer blade malfunctioned, crushing his friends. Daddy told Mama it ain't right to die like that. Mama shook her head, and I saw a new storm rising up. I saw it in their eyes. Memphis sanitation workers shared one common trait. Like my daddy, most of the men were black. They carried rusty garbage barrels as slop dripped down their clothes. White managers called them ugly names, too ugly to repeat. The average pay for sanitation workers was $1.70 an hour. Daddy called it starvation pay. Even with a full-time job, he needed government help to buy groceries for our family. Sanitation workers formed a labor union to advocate their rights. Better pay seemed close at hand. The labor union encouraged better treatment and safety on the job, but the men faced opposition from Memphis Mayor Henry Loeb. Tall like a giant and stubborn like a mule, Mayor Loeb said no to a pay increase. He did not acknowledge the workers' labor union, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 1733. To insult the men even further, Mayor Loeb gave little assistance to the Cole and Walker families. When they could take the abuse no more, 1,300 men deserted their garbage barrels. They organized a labor strike on February 12, 1968. In the morning and afternoon, for 65 days, sanitation workers marched 14 blocks through the streets of downtown Memphis, from Claiborne Temple to the steps of City Hall. They squared their shoulders, raised their heads, and carried their picket signs. My daddy marched in that number. He marched for better pay. He marched for decent treatment. My daddy marched for me. So I won't spoil the whole story for you, but I encourage you to read this book for several reasons. Like she mentions, the reason she must tell this story and that I must tell this story is that we don't forget. And so many pieces of history are in these books that people are trying to ban. They're trying to ban books that make them feel bad about the treatment of certain groups of people, because, God forbid, their little child feels bad about the way people were treated in the past. But if we ignore history, if we whitewash history, we're doomed to repeat it. And so that's why I think it's important, it's valuable to read books like this. So I encourage you to check it out. I have a bookshop.org list of books that I've covered. You can get them there. It benefits local bookstores. I don't make anything from the books, but check out Memphis, Martin, and this Mountaintop. I think you'll really enjoy it, and you'll learn something that you can pass on to your children. Peace. Thanks for joining me.